To begin, we like to try and start things on time. Just a couple of housekeeping items before I begin. The washrooms are located just outside the lobby, just to your right. Also, we would just like to ask that if you do have any cell phones or any devices that you could put them on vibrate while everyone's doing their readings, we would appreciate it. So good evening and welcome to our Life Writers Night. I'm very pleased to be here this evening with all of you, and I know the group of writers are thrilled to have all of your support. You are about to enjoy a magical evening of stories being shared by our special guests under the direction of Sally Elliott and Joan Sheffield, who volunteer their time as facilitators of these classes. We are also very pleased to have Zach Elliott, who was performing up here, and he did a fantastic job. Thank you, Zach. And we're pleased to have Joanne Smith here as well, who will be doing some musical entertainment throughout the program. So we're about to begin our magical journey down memory lane, and I would like to call upon Jim Simpson, who will be introducing our stories.
Thank you, Sherry. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Tonight, for our first reader tonight, we have a little bit of a change. Joan Sheffield is going to read for Mary Ingham. So, Mary Ingham's story tonight is my first life writing class, Joan Sheffield.
Our Thursday life writing friend Mary Ingham had a nasty fall, so she's not able to come tonight, and I had the honor of reading her story about her beginning her journey through life writing class. In October 2012, I was fortunate to meet a group of people who have been my friends. Robbie had told me about a life writing class that she had attended in Brooklyn. I decided to join the next class. Not knowing what to expect, I showed up with a story that I had written about Canada's Thanksgiving. I was warmly welcomed by Lynn Palmer and the other members of the class. Since then, I've written about many things that have happened in my life, mostly about my growing up years in Owen Sound and the summers at my grandparents' farm. Memories come to mind that I hadn't thought about in years. It was like therapy for me. I've listened with interest to the life stories of my classmates. We've laughed together, and we've cried too. Some of their stories are Brian, his family history in Brock Township during the War of 1812. Heather, her perfect day with her dad. Ida, we met her brother and then said goodbye. Inez, her life as a little girl living with her grandmother. Joan, history of her family in Oshawa and her first summer job. Margaret, the day she spent gardening with her husband. Robbie, the story of Hanukkah and the lighting of menorah. I feel richer for having taken the life writing class. At each session, I met new and interesting people and continued my connection with Heather, Inez, Joan, and Robbie. There is an old saying, when you're 20 years old, you have the face that God gave you. When you are 70 years old, you have the face that life gave you. A word of advice. When writing the story of your own life, don't let anyone else hold the pen.
Our next reader tonight is Rita King. Neighbours. Rita King.
Neighbours. These days, though I'm retired and should have lots of time for neighborhood chats and get-togethers, somehow my neighbors are mostly strangers. All winter we are closeted inside, cocooning against the icy winds, only surfacing long enough to hurry from house to car and back again. Once spring arrives, we call across the back fence, "Hi, how are you? How was your winter?" as we go about our gardening chores, raking up the debris of winter and edging our flower beds. By the time summer arrives, I'm scarcely seen at home, only a day or two every 3 weeks on my runs home from the cottage to pay bills and replenish the cottage pantry. How different it is from my early days on the street, when we women were home most of the summer, tending trees and lawns and flower beds and raising children. We were home all day in the winter too, as stay-at-home moms, long before jobs and ultimately retirement changed our lives. In those days, we had coffee together 2 or 3 mornings a week. We walked to the park together with our carriages and strollers. We babysat each other, gossiped over the quilting frame, shared cuttings from our perennials, spent hours talking about life over the back fence. We knew our neighbors' relatives and what was going on, good or bad, in their lives. We bowled together in an evening league on a team we called the Neighbors, and in the Women's Candy League in the afternoon, taking our babies and toddlers with us in carriage or playpen. Children's birthday parties were a neighborhood affair, a madhouse of games and balloons, sandwiches, birthday cake, and loot bags. Adults often got together for card games, New Year's Eve parties, and even family camping trips. There was little or no car traffic on our block, so the neighborhood children all played on the street. They rode their tricycles, wheeled their doll carriages, played jumpsy or road hockey. There were 2 or 3 block parent signs displayed on the street, including the one in my living room window. And all the moms kept their eyes on all the children, so everyone felt safe letting their kids range freely through the neighborhood. They walked to school together and were allowed to stay out playing together until the lights came on. A tent pitched in our backyard became a great place for a girls' sleepover, and one year the boys constructed a skateboard ramp in our driveway. The family destined to be among our closest friends for many years were our next-door neighbors, Dutch immigrants who had landed in Montreal several years before as a newly married couple, along with their older parents and 3 brothers. They had little more than the suitcases they carried and very little English. Even though they held white-collar jobs in the Netherlands, they were all given work on farms, which of course they were very ill-suited for. They managed to better themselves within a few years, but it must have been a rude shock when their first accommodation in Canada was a dilapidated farmhand's house with chickens walking into the kitchen through the open door. Letters home to Zaandam gave a rosy picture of Canadian life, but many lonely tears were shed in the bedroom at night. Helen and I took to each other right away. She had 3 daughters, all with the round, rosy cheeks and fair hair that made them look typically Dutch. We often had coffee together, borrowed sugar or eggs or maternity clothes, and looked after each other's children. A month after my son Jamie was born, their son arrived, and the 2 boys spent many happy hours together, first sharing a playpen on our front porch, then playing cars together in our sandbox, then later playing on the same soccer team. The children from both families learned to skate in our backyard rink. I gave Helen rhubarb from my garden, and she returned the favor with crab apples from her tree. Earl and I were often invited to family parties next door. They were great, noisy, happy affairs, encompassing the elderly mother and father, the 3 brothers with their wives and children, an uncle and aunt, and often friends from their former neighborhood. They loved to party, and any excuse would do to get together and to have a good time. The eldest daughter became my babysitter at just 12 years old, and competently looked after not only my children, but usually one of my foster babies. And of course, her mother was right next door in case of an emergency. For 30 years, Helen and I shared recipes and confidences, laughs and worries, our children's graduation and wedding plans, and just day-to-day friendship. I was devastated when they announced their plans to sell the house and divide their retirement years between their cottage and a house in Florida. No one else who has lived in the house next door has ever become as close. The neighborhood gradually began to change as the children grew up and left home. Some of the neighbors were widowed, many moved away, some have since died. Now there is a new crop of children living in new houses across the street, built on the vacant lot where our children played. Sad but true, our close-knit old neighborhood is gone. Only 3 of the original families are still on the street. But the memories of fun times living and growing together with neighborhood friends still linger to be remembered and enjoyed.